Hello, fellow Protoss! I'm Gillyweed here with the IMBAbuilds audio guide to HuK's PvT 5-gate Warp Prism Attack. Don't forget to check the video description below for a link to the IMBAbuilds website where you'll find tips on the build and other replays of it in action. In a second, I'll ask you to pause the video while you start a game against an easy AI Terran opponent. Once the game loads, pause it and come back here. I'll then give you a countdown and you can resume your game. Ready? Pause the video. Welcome back. Get ready to unpause the game and start your first probe in 10 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, go. You just started your first probe. Keep making them. You'll start your first pylon after starting your 9th probe. You should have just started your 9th probe. When you get close to 100 minerals, pull out a probe to warp in a pylon near your nexus, then return it to mining. Your pylon should finish at the same time as your 10th probe. When you can, start an 11th probe and chrono boost it out. Chrono boost your nexus. When your 12th probe finishes, use it to warp in a gateway, then send it to scout or mine. Warp in both assimilators as you get the resources. Warp in a pylon at the main ramp. Chrono boost the nexus. When your assimilators finish, put 2 probes on each. When your gateway finishes, warp in a cybernetics core. Chrono boost the nexus. Warp in a pylon. You should be at 20 supply. When the cyber core finishes, research warp gate and build a stalker. Build a mothership core after this probe finishes. Once you start the mothership core, chrono boost the nexus. Send a probe to the natural. When the mothership core finishes, move out with it and your stalker. Start a second stalker and rally it to the first. If the Terran has Reapers, leave 1 stalker at home to defend your probes. At 400 minerals, build a nexus. At 100 gas, warp in a robo facility and put 1 more probe on each of your assimilators. Warp in a pylon. When your second stalker reaches your first, use your units to poke into the Terran base to try to see his unit composition and if he has expanded. Start a sentry at the gateway. Warp in 2 gateways as you get the minerals. When your robo finishes, start a Warp Prism and Chrono Boost it out. However, if the Terran player is on only one base, don't build the Warp Prism. Instead, go for standard Colossi and upgrade PvT macro play. Your Nexus is almost done. Transfer probes to the natural so that you have about an even amount on both your mineral lines. When your Warp Gate research finishes, transform your gateway into a Warp Gate. Warp in a pylon. When your gateways finish, transform them into Warp Gates as well. When your Warp Prism finishes, warp in 3 sentries. Send out a probe to build a proxy pylon. Once you have 4 sentries, load them into the Warp Prism and move out toward the Terran main. By this point, you should have 32 probes, 2 stalkers, 4 sentries, and a Warp Prism and mothership core. Try to keep the Warp Prism hidden as you move out. Warp in 2 more gateways. Warp in a pylon. Start an observer and Chrono Boost it out. Rally it to the Terran base. When your Warp Prism gets close to the main, poke the natural with your stalkers and mothership core to bait the Terran units into the natural. Then drop your sentries into the main near the ramp and force field the units out. Use the Warp Prism to warp in 5 units at a time, favoring zealots and sentries. This attack must do damage, otherwise you'll be very behind in this game. From the attack, transition into standard Colossi and Forge mid-game play. If you dealt a lot of damage, you can also take a greedy third base as you transition. Good luck and have fun!